Welcome to part 2 of the risk management series on worst case scenarios for the next decade. I realized that I was a little too free-flowing in my last video, and some of the things I said didn't make sense, and I'm going to now circle back and correct those, just like I often have to correct trade ideas I have. So here we go. With the added benefit of thinking about it for 20 minutes, which I recommend doing before you enter any trade. You should think about it, having thought about it for at least 20 minutes, if not longer. Probably a lot longer since you're risking your hard-earned money. I probably would I need to come up with an actual system, which I don't have yet. So for now, I'm assuming 20%. And that really is just tongue-in-cheek, because obviously that's probably not going to happen. But I need a plan for once we're down 2% on a day, I need to start considering that 20% is possible, something like that. And if I was over-leveraged, I would at that point be forced to liquidate, which is always bad. Being forced out of a position is always bad. It's never good to have to close a position for any reason related to liquidity rather than market fundamentals and statistics. So anyway, I'm just kind of showing some of my backyard here instead of myself, because I like being private for now at least. But realistically, you would not even look at like a 2% normal down day, or even an orderly 7% down. It would be like if you notice that, you've gone down 2% in 10 minutes or 2% in 5 minutes, maybe even faster, but not on an economic news with like no news apparent on your news channels. There's a massive decline occurring very rapidly, because that would indicate something might have happened that is not yet in the news that someone else has figured out. And then you need to start considering those scenarios that I mentioned. So, excuse me, I'm participating in the horrible habit of Zen tooth decay product, but gives me energy because I'm trying to get on a new sleep schedule. TLDR, I guess I'll share it, even though it might not help anyone at all. I'm trying to get to where I go to sleep right around now, which is the right after the Globex opens up again. I want to go to sleep at like 6 p.m. Eastern time-ish, something like that, and then wake up for the London Open and then stay up for the rest of it, because that allows, to me, the best trading opportunities, because I think the Asian session is the worst, for me at least, in terms of volatility. So anyway, but the real way to do it is to, if you're up on the day, if it's a green day, you can probably feel comfortable taking a little bit more risk. But once the day starts to spiral out of control, you need to start accounting for these scenarios and deleveraging. And if you have a system in place, or if I have a trade in place where I've been able to define a stop loss that is a hard stop that is on the exchange, then it's probably okay to not worry so much about these scenarios, as in, like, it's definitely okay. But until that hard stop is defined and you have a system for doing so, which I currently don't for the way I trade right now, I plan to do that and have like a clearly defined hard stop on my trades. So for every trade that has a hard stop somewhere, and I'll share my philosophy on stop losses. I think I'm going to get ridiculed by a lot of people, but I'm not actually a really high risk trader. I've returned so far maybe 12 or 13% this year, something like that, which is outperforming the market technically. I don't know if I'm going to continue that. That's my goal, is to just outperform the market, but I'm not trying to outperform it by 100% or anything like that. I just want to outperform by a little bit, and I have reservations about whether or not I'll be able to keep doing that, but yeah, that's the thought process. I'd like to have a hard stop that never gets hit because I take the loss before it gets to my stop loss. So I'm sure you guys will notice that you can often tell when a trade is likely to hit your stop loss, where the trade is not performing as planned. And I've run a bunch of back tests and looked at tons of simulations of trades over a number of asset classes. And the one universal thing I found is that stop losses kill your edge, but you need to have a stop loss or be willing to take limit down 20% in the event that the market's just collapsing. I think if you know that tensions have de-escalated and the decline is steady, even something like COVID probably you need to be thinking 20% is possible if you were trading during COVID. But yeah, so actually COVID's not a great example. You probably should have been assuming 20% was possible during COVID. And we got halfway there, actually more than halfway there on a few days in March of 2020. Yeah, either way, the idea is to actually take your losses on like maybe a brief uptick, or maybe you do just manually stop yourself out before it gets to your stop loss if it's just going straight down. But during most market regimes, you're able to get out at a better price than your stop loss, even if your trade's not working, if you give yourself enough wiggle room and you're not trading with like a 10-point stop loss. And so I found that I'm going to have more edge if I don't let 90% of my trades even get to my stop, but actually take the loss before then. And so that's kind of why I'm defining all this stuff. And same kind of thing goes for take profits. Take profits kill your edge too, just like a stop loss does, but less so, because at least you're getting out ideally at a local high because the market hits a limit, that it hasn't hit before, assuming you didn't move your take profit, assuming it was static. So take profit's not as detrimental as a stop loss. But still, even with the take profit, if the market is just going straight up or down, depending on if you're long or short, you probably should not be getting out. You really just shouldn't. Like if you're getting one of those crazy moves where every single tick or 90% of ticks in the past 30 seconds are down, you probably should not be taking profit at all. You should probably be riding it because there's just simply so much momentum in your favor. There's no reason to get out. Yeah, that's just general thought. Probably a lot of nuance to that could contradict some of what I'm saying, but just generally speaking, that's the philosophy. So, yeah, those are just some thoughts on risk management, I guess. And the more you can know what your plan is and know that you're going to follow it. It's not about having a plan and saying, I've got to follow my plan. I tried that for like 10 years. That doesn't really work. It's more of knowing yourself, knowing what you're actually capable of and what plan you will actually follow in real time when the bullets are flying or the futures are, diving or whatever. That should be what your plan is centered around. Actual reality, not your plan of how you would execute if you were a machine, because humans, we have some disadvantages versus machines, right? We have some huge advantages versus machines as well, but that's where our disadvantages are, is in not knowing for sure that we'll follow a plan, because we can change our mind and deal with so many raging emotions either direction, even hidden emotions we don't know we're experiencing, or rather choosing to not know that we're experiencing, perhaps. Okay. I actually really don't want to upload this video, but I actually think it's helpful, and I think most people will hate it, but I'm going to upload it anyway because no one really follows my channel, and so it won't really matter. And I don't know. if I end up doing well this year and start continually performing better and better, it'll be cool to have documented this thought process. So that's kind of it for part 2. I don't actually, I hope none of these things happen. And I think if a lot of these things happen, they are recoverable for civilization. So that's why I have a plan. It's not like, well, the world's over, so I'm not going to trade anymore. It's like any of those 5 scenarios I think I listed, there's recovery. I didn't include China, war with China and Taiwan. I think you could just price that in as like a tactical, that's about the same as a tactical nuke. The tactical nuke on Ukraine scenario, I think very similar risk profile, where it could be anywhere from like a level 1 to a level 3, but most likely, I'm guessing China invading Taiwan would be between 7% limit down to 14%. I don't think you'd get to level 3, but that's just a thought process there that I'm going to plan around 7 to 14, and I'll be sizing accordingly. So if there is like a really strong market decline occurring, and I can identify what it is, once I've identified like, okay, it's a tactical nuke, or okay, it's Taiwan being invaded, or okay, Trump is like suspending elections in a secret way. Could also just be Trump, like, or any politician for that matter, just choosing to like manipulate elections too, because that's one thing I kind of screwed up in my first video. I said it was like I think that ChatGPT was underestimating the probability of suspending elections, but it actually was probably correct. And it's probably more that like overall it's 20%, but it wouldn't be, there's only a 5% maybe chance of outright suspension of elections, because that'd be so unpopular. It's probably more of like the other 20% comes from all this in between stuff, because Russia technically has elections, right? But they're not really elections. It would be kind of moving more towards that kind of model, where we have elections that aren't elections. That is like much, much more likely, exponentially more likely. So just my opinion once again, but yeah, in those events, I still think you'd get some pretty serious limit moves, because the market would figure out that's happening. The market's pretty smart. Okay, that's it. Crazy guy out.